Making overall rankings is going to be an extremely difficult task. And the reason for this is everybody's playing in a different format. And really, fantasy football, it comes down to understanding the nuances of your particular format, how to take advantage of those nuances, and how that's going to affect positional value. But I'm going to be giving you all these overall rankings, and I want to at least dive into how you should be adjusting for your own format before we dive into them. And this will be a league that's a 12-teamer. You have one starting quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, one tight end, and two flex spots. Now, if you're transitioning over to a 10-team league, an 8-team league, you're just getting more shallow overall. The wide receiver depth in your leagues should be there where you're always going to be able to find a wide receiver off the waiver wire. So what I'm going to need you to do is push up the elite level tight ends in these rankings, as well as push up those running backs. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you're going and adding teams to your league or potentially adding flex spots, then those wide receivers will slide up rankings. So let's just look at the overall amount of starters that are required across your entire league on a week-to-week basis. And essentially, the more skill positional guys that need to be started, whether or not that's due to more teams being in your league or more starting lineup spots in your lineup in general, you're going to push wide receivers either up or down. But that should be it. Let's go through. Let's dive into these rankings right after you drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. We are closing in on 90,000 subs. I didn't think it would be possible, but it looks like we may hit that. And if we do hit 90,000 subscribers, that means we are going to get a 24-hour live draft marathon going on this live stream. So make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you drop a like if you're already subscribed so we get recommended to someone else. But let's go through. Let's dive into our first tier here. This is going to be top tier running backs. The running backs that can legitimately break fantasy football. Jonathan Taylor 1, Christian McCaffrey 2. Now, we've talked about this in depth over the past few weeks. If you go through and look at the Christian McCaffrey profile, I understand, yes, he can break fantasy football on his own right. He can get a win rate close to 33%. Like, we haven't seen this since Marshall Faulk. We haven't seen this since LT. 29 points per game in 2019, a target share close to 24%. Baker Mayfield may actually be the best quarterback play Carolina's had over the past 4 years, even though I'm not a Baker fan. It's been a train wreck there in Carolina. So there are so many strong reasons to put Christian McCaffrey at 1, but I'm not going to do it because if we look at Jonathan Taylor, we can say the same thing here. This was a running back 1 in fantasy last year, and it was his second season in the NFL. And this is a player that has a significantly high floor because I know injuries are mainly random in football, but at the end of the day, Jonathan Taylor's missed one game over the past 5 years, and that one game was due to a COVID close contact. Over 1,000 touches in college, doesn't miss a single game, and then obviously the workload that he had last year. I think Jonathan Taylor does have an extremely high floor, so he is going to be at 1. Now, our tier 2 is going to be composed of elite level wide receivers. Here we are going to have Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, and Ja'Marr Chase. I used to have Cooper Kupp leading us off here at 3, but just given the Matthew Stafford elbow injury, I don't want to dramatically change my rankings, but a lot of people were already making the argument that Justin Jefferson should be the wide receiver 1 before the Stafford injury. And now that we do have that Stafford injury, I think we can easily use that as a tie break. We can put Jefferson at 3, move Cooper Kupp down to 4. And with Ja'Marr Chase, usually you would look at a profile like this where Ja'Marr Chase, from a target share perspective, honestly seems like he may have some negative regression coming in with his overall fantasy points because he had a touchdown rate over 10%. He had a target share that was lower than what you had from T. Higgins on a per game basis. So this would usually be a recipe for natural regression. But at the end of the day, he was a 21-year-old rookie, one of the best college prospects of all time. He goes out there, he puts up the wide receiver 5 season on a points per game basis. I want to bet on the Cincinnati Bengals offense being able to have more plays per game given the offensive line play. I think they push the pace of play. More plays per game equals more fantasy points, especially when they're coming from a hyper-efficient quarterback with Joe Burrow and a hyper-efficient wide receiver with Ja'Marr Chase. So even though Chase and his underlying metrics with his air yards per game, with his target share in this respective offense, doesn't look like he belongs next to Justin Jefferson and Cooper Kupp, keep in mind he was a rookie last year. He's only going to get better. We will have Chase at 5. Now, dropping us down to our third tier, this will be a list of running backs that, in my opinion, you can order whatever way you want. Now, I know you maybe want to go down there in the comment section and say, gosh dang, this guy's a clown. How the hell does he have Dalvin Cook at 10? Trust me, I get it, guys. But that's why we are making this a tier list. I think this is going to be the running back tier that all these guys have their individual red flags, but they all have very strong signs to possibly have the running back one overall season in their range of outcomes. And starting off at 6, we are going to have Austin Ekeler. This was the highest scoring running back out of this group last year. And at the same time, we are expecting that this Los Angeles Chargers offense is yet again a top 5 offense in the NFL. Austin Ekeler is going to be playing in one of the best offenses in the NFL, and he's going to have one of the best receiving down skill sets. So that's a recipe for success. But if we are talking about the red flags that we may have with Ekeler and what doesn't push him up to that Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey tier, is Austin Ekeler does look like he's in line for some touchdown regression. We've talked about the fact that 2 years ago, Austin Ekeler scored a whopping 3 touchdowns total. Compare that to last year at 20. And I think that this is a clear candidate to see some touchdown regression. And I understand a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, Mason, he missed time in 2020. That's why he only scored 3 touchdowns. Guys, he played 10 games. He scored 0.33 touchdowns per game compared to 1.67 this past season. I think you don't have as many touchdowns for Ekeler. Also, he's going into age 27. We know age 27 is going to be that historical age cliff for these running backs. Combine this with Isaiah Spiller being the best running back he's had in that backfield alongside him since Melvin Gordon back 3 years ago. So while, yes, Austin Ekeler, a great talent, that's why I have him as our running back 3. But given the red flags attached to that profile, we are going to be pushing down behind those wide receivers. He will be at the top of this tier, though. And then going to our 7th player overall, our running back 4. We talked about this a couple days ago. I know it's going to be aggressive. I get it. We are going to go with Joe Mixon. Now, here with Joe Mixon, this is a running back that let's look at what we've had over the past few years. And we've done this time and time again. He was the running back 20 in 2019. But let's remember, what was this Cincinnati Bengals offense like in 2019? It was the worst team in the NFL. The worst. That's why they get the first overall pick in 2021. That's why they get Joe Burrow in the first place. And then in 2020, Joe Mixon comes out and he has 77% of this team's carries on a per game basis at the very top of the NFL. He has a target share closing in on 12% as well. So he had the best workload over almost any other running back in fantasy. But the offense was piss poor. Joe Burrow was a rookie. Joe Burrow missed half the season. And then once Burrow was announced out for the year, of course, they weren't bringing Joe Mixon back. But still, he was the running back 11 on a per game basis. And then in 2021, the 3rd straight season for Joe Mixon to eclipse over 70% of this team's carries on a per game basis. He has almost a 10% team target share as well, so he is at least drawing targets out of the backfield, and he was the running back 7 behind one of, if not the worst offensive lines in the NFL. We know that this offensive line led the NFL in sacks allowed. So now that PFF is grading out Cincinnati to have a top 10 offensive line unit, and going back to what we were discussing with Ja'Marr Chase, I think that this team decides to push the pace of play. I'm all in on Mixon, as you can clearly tell. If you want to move him down these rankings, the furthest spot you can move him down to is 10. Okay, he deserves a spot in this tier. Now, going over to our next running back, what's really funny is we're going to have him here at 8. I do think you can move him down to 9, but on Underdog Fantasy, you're seeing Najee Harris sometimes fall down to pick 16, pick 17. Now, of course, I'm taking advantage of this on Underdog Fantasy. You should be as well. The number 1 place to hop in some real money fantasy football drafts this offseason. 0 time commitment during the season, so you can fire up a couple extra underdog drafts and still focus in on those teams that you really care about during the year. But y'all have seen us live streaming on Underdog every single night this offseason. And if you want to get in one of those drafts with us, get in a draft in the public lobby, make sure you go to the link in the description, the link in the comment section. Go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code FLOCK when you sign up, and you'll get our 2022 rankings, our 2022 fantasy football draft guide, and you'll have some fun with us in the live streams with a $10 deposit and promo code FLOCK. But yeah, here in your casual leagues, I think Najee Harris is going to be a very simple bet to make. This is a running back that's going into year 2. This is a running back that we are looking at as someone that had almost 75% of his team's carries on a per game basis last year and a 14% team target share. Now, I'm very worried that he lacks the top end athleticism to have breakaway ability. I'm worried about the offensive line. I'm worried about the offense in general. So that's why a running back that had this impressive of rookie season, I'm not going to be projecting to have the Jonathan Taylor year 2 jump. But still, I think he has a very high floor player. Now, our 9th player off the board, Derrick Henry. Guys, trust me, I get it. I know a lot of people probably want to put Derrick Henry up here at 6. And you can draft him at 9 in almost every single underdog draft if you want to. And I'll take advantage of that price tag. But with Derrick Henry, this is someone that does have red flags. Over the past 3 years, while Derrick Henry has been a league-crushing running back, he's been running behind one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. And now PFF is grading this out as a bottom 6 offensive line in the NFL. Combined with no A.J. Brown here in Tennessee, and the historical splits with and without A.J. Brown for this offense means that Tennessee is probably going to be less efficient regardless without A.J. Brown. Now we add on the fact that Derrick Henry is 28 years old, and I know people are going to go down there and say, oh, Mason, Derrick Henry's an outlier. Derrick Henry is the exception to the rule. He is. That's why he's the only 28-year-old running back going inside the top 150 fantasy picks right now. I can still bring it up as a red flag. So with those 3 red flags, we will still have Derrick Henry as the top 10 pick. Of course, he's the top 10 pick. He can win you your fantasy football draft. But I think I am going to be breaking a tie in favor of someone like Mixon. Now, our running back at 10, Dalvin Cook. I think with Dalvin Cook, this is a running back that's missed almost on average 4 to 5 games every single season of his NFL career. Combine this with the fact that I think this Minnesota Vikings offense is going to be a little bit more pass happy with Kevin O'Connell coming over. I don't know if they're going to want to continue to give Dalvin Cook 20 carries a game as he has seen over the past 3 seasons. So I do think that there are some separate red flags. Of course, this is also a 27-year-old running back that we got to talk about that age cliff with. But just recapping this entire tier, this tier is get your guy. I'm a Joe Mixon kind of guy, so I'm going to be drafting a lot of Joe Mixon in this range. But if you're a Dalvin Cook guy, if you're a Derrick Henry guy, hell, go get him. Just please don't draft him over those elite level wide receivers that have no question marks, unless maybe you can only start a total of 3 wide receivers in your league. Now, let's go down to our 11th player, starting off the next tier, Travis Kelce. Here with Travis Kelce, it is going to be very dependent on your league. Going back to what I was discussing previously, if you're playing in like an 8-team league, a 10-team league where you only have 1 flex spot, the tight end position is one of the very few positions where you can actually get a significant edge over your league mates because everybody's going to have a stacked team. So in a format like that, I would actually be willing to move Travis Kelce significantly up these rankings. But we're talking about that 12-team league here. With Travis Kelce, he should have so many targets available in Kansas City in an offense that I still want to project to be one of the better offenses in the NFL. And with Travis Kelce, he is not without his own red flags. Travis Kelce is going to be 33 years old this season. The next oldest skill position player in fantasy football drafts right now is Marvin Jones. Okay. It at least needs to be mentioned. He did see the efficiency drop off last year in his yards per route run. There are red flags, but we've seen Travis Kelce break fantasy football specifically in 2020, and now you have no Tyreek Hill. Now, going down to our 12th spot, we are going to have Stefon Diggs. With Stefon Diggs, I'm going to rank him this low because I think if you draft him at the end of the first round, you're still going to get him in every single draft. Like, I could reasonably see Stefon Diggs with the departure of Emmanuel Sanders as well as Cole Beasley this upcoming season in an offense that should be extremely fast-paced and an offense that really wants to throw the ball. I could see Stefon Diggs being the wide receiver 1 in fantasy, but I think if you're drafting him as the 12th overall player, you're still going to be getting him in a ton of casual drafts. And then at 13, we are going to have Aaron Jones. With Aaron Jones and even DeAndre Swift at 14, we'll throw both these guys in here. I think they're the same exact player. I don't expect either running back to be seeing every single touch out of their backfield. Like over the past 3 seasons, Aaron Jones has averaged 51% of his team's carries on a per game basis. He's still the running back 7 during that time period because the receiving skill set, and especially if we're looking at no Davante Adams in this offense, I don't expect that receiving skill set to be going anywhere, probably getting more involved in this offense if we're going to be completely honest. So love Aaron Jones at 13, same exact profile as DeAndre Swift at 14. Usually we would lean with a younger player, especially when this Detroit Lions offensive line is great. But if I'm looking at Aaron Jones versus DeAndre Swift, if we're drafting both of these guys for their usage in the red zone, as well as their receiving skill set, who's drawing more targets? The running back playing alongside Christian Watson, Allen Lazard, Romeo Doubs, and Robert Tonyan? Gross, or the running back playing alongside TJ Hawkinson, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark? Probably Aaron Jones in that situation. And also, what offense is going to have more trips to the red zone? The Green Bay Packers or the Detroit Lions? I know there's a lot of Detroit fans this season for whatever reason, but guys, it's going to be the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to bet on Aaron Jones over DeAndre Swift. And then our running back 15, rounding out this tier, is going to be Saquon Barkley. With Barkley, an elite level athlete, obviously the best running back prospect to ever come into the NFL, or at least over the past 20 years, given his receiving skill set. I'm still worried about the New York Giants offense. I'm still worried that he is going to be capped specifically with the touchdown upside that he's going to have, because while I do like that Brian Daboll is coming over from Buffalo, I think that he is potentially going to be the final thing to turn this New York Giants organization around. This specific season, if we're looking at Las Vegas sportsbooks, they're not telling us to expect the New York Giants to be any good. And of course, Barkley has been injured over the past 2 years, but I'm not nearly as concerned with the Saquon Barkley injuries. I mean, they seem random. He rolls his ankle on one of his teammates. Like, let's not dive down that rabbit hole. But now let's drop it down a tier. We are going to go into tier 5 here, and let's go over to Davante Adams, the 16th player off the board. So you're probably not going to be drafting that much Davante Adams in this range. Like on Underdog Fantasy, Davante Adams goes before Derrick Henry in a lot of drafts. But I'm looking at a wide receiver that was my 3rd pick overall in drafts last year. Remember, I had Davante Adams ranked at 3 because I was looking at a lot of those mid-round 1 running backs, guys like Ezekiel Elliott, saying, you know what? These guys have some red flags. And Davante Adams, we know he's going to be a top 3 wide receiver almost regardless. Let's take Davante Adams and get Joe Mixon round 2, DeAndre Swift round 3. But with Davante Adams, his situation's significantly worse. Trust me, I'm a Derek Carr fan. I know everybody's a Derek Carr fan at this point. But in reality, instead of competing for targets with freaking Allen Lazard and Robert Tonyan, 2 guys that I don't think are talented, he's going to be competing with Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow, 2 guys that are very talented. And to go along with this, instead of playing with Aaron Rodgers, the back-to-back MVP, he is going to be playing with Derek Carr. And if you're a Derek Carr fan, please put that fandom aside and at least admit to yourself that the efficiency, the quarterback play overall in transitioning from Derek Carr to Aaron Rodgers will be a significant downgrade. Now, going to our 17th player, CeeDee Lamb. With CeeDee Lamb, I understand his best finish ever was last year as the wide receiver 16 on a points per game basis. And the Dallas Cowboys were the number 1 team in the NFL that season. So that doesn't speak that well for CeeDee Lamb. But the amount of targets that are going to be available in Dallas this upcoming year with the departure of Amari Cooper, the departure of Cedric Wilson, with the Michael Gallup injury, with the James Washington injury. Like right now, there's nobody left in Dallas outside of CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz. And this is a wide receiver that was elite with his yards per route run last year. This was a wide receiver that did so at a younger age than guys like Devonta Smith, than someone like Jalen Waddle, Najee Harris. He's younger than Kenny Pickett, a rookie in this class. So he is going to continue to prove. He was a great prospect coming out of OU. Side note, I actually got to see him play my Texas Longhorns, and he tore us up. It was not the best experience to be a Longhorn fan, but CeeDee Lamb, great situation. This Dallas Cowboys offense could be number 1 in the NFL in passing rate over expectation, as well as pace of play. Now, moving down to 18, we are going to have Alvin Kamara. Sounds like Alvin Kamara is managing to get his legal issues pushed back. It sounds like Alvin Kamara is probably going to be able to play this season. I will say there's still red flags with the Kamara profile. This is a running back that could be suspended 6 weeks. We don't know. I'm not a lawyer. You're not a lawyer. So let's at least acknowledge that that's going to be a red flag. B, with Alvin Kamara, if he does manage to play, we can assume that the target shares probably lower than what it's historically been, given the fact that Michael Thomas is healthy. They bring in Chris Olave. They bring in Jarvis Landry. This is by far and away the best New Orleans Saints wide receiver core that we have seen since Brandon Cooks left to New England. Now, our last player in this range, someone that I went from drafting none of, and I repeat, none of last year, none of the year before when he was a first-round selection, but Nick Chubb, my guy this season. I mean, Nick Chubb right now on Underdog is going in the 3rd round. I'm able to draft Nick Chubb at the 305 in 12-team leagues on Underdog Fantasy. This is a running back that, in my opinion, is potentially in the best situation of his NFL career. Even if you don't think Kareem Hunt's going to get traded, hell, he's playing behind an elite offensive line. Right now, PFF has the Cleveland Browns as the second best offensive line in the NFL. We know Nick Chubb. I've always said it. I used to say it as a slight when he was a first-round pick, but now he goes in the third, and it's a major compliment. He is the best committee running back in the NFL, and he may be in the best situation if Deshaun Watson does not get suspended for the entire season. Right now, it's up in the air. Right now, we don't exactly know, but if Deshaun Watson does only miss 6 weeks and Nick Chubb ends up getting to play with a top 5 quarterback for the second half of the season, yeah, they may not run the ball as much, but the red zone opportunities are going to be through the roof. Now, let's drop it down a tier. Let's go over to our 20th player. We are going to have Mark Andrews here. Mark Andrews, I used to have higher than this, but I simply moved him down just based on the fact that we're looking around, looking at casual fantasy football leagues, and people are able to draft Mark Andrews in the 3rd round. So I'm like, okay, I can move him down to 20 here. And if people are following these rankings, they're still going to come away with a lot of Mark Andrews. Now, why someone would tell you not to draft Mark Andrews is if you're looking at the Baltimore Ravens offense, it was an extreme outlier with the passing volume that they had last year, given the injuries they saw to the defense and the injuries that they had at the running back position, not allowing the Baltimore Ravens to be the most run-heavy offense in the NFL as we're used to. So you should see a significant drop-off in the overall passing volume and the passing attempts in Baltimore this upcoming season. But what I would say is, if you look at the historical efficiency of Lamar Jackson and we compare that to the quarterback play that you had with Tyler Huntley last year, I think that you're going to see the overall offensive volume fall off. However, the efficiency is going to offset this. I think the efficiency in Baltimore is going to make it where Mark Andrews may come away with less targets, but more touchdowns. And if we say there's a chance Rashad Bateman's not as good as Hollywood Brown when Rashad Bateman had 1.3 yards per route run last year, maybe Andrews gets to 26, 27% of a team target share. He was the tight end 1 in fantasy on a per game basis last year. Now, Leonard Fournette is the 21st player off the board. With Fournette, thank God the Tampa Bay Buccaneers center did only have cramps and he was able to come back on the field. That looked very scary for a second because the Bucs have already lost a decent amount of offensive linemen this offseason. Like when PFF initially put out their offensive line rankings, they had Tampa as an elite level unit. I doubt that Tampa is still that elite level unit with the offensive line injuries that they've suffered. Combine this with the fact that they bring in the possible best passing down running back in the NFL draft this year with Rachaad White. We don't know if James Cook is that guy. Well, we'll figure it out. But they bring in a very capable passing down running back. At the same time, they have the offensive line downgrades. At the same time, they bring in Julio Jones to potentially make it where they don't have to lean as heavily on the running backs with the overall target share of this offense. I think that there are some red flags. We can throw on the weight concern with Leonard Fournette coming into camp, possibly pissing off the coaching staff. I don't know. I think there's enough stink lingering around Leonard Fournette to have him down here at 21 as a late 2nd round selection, but I completely see the upside case. I mean, he was a mid running back 1 last year on a per game basis, and I believe he had 6 targets per game. Now, our 22nd player off the board here will be Javonte Williams, and Javonte has space to go up because there's a report coming out today saying that Melvin Gordon's dealing with a foot injury. And this is something that you need to monitor because if Melvin Gordon plays, Melvin Gordon's going to be in a committee here with Javonte Williams, and it is going to be another nasty situation. Melvin Gordon last year in games that they played averaged more carries per game, yards per carry, rushing yards per game, fantasy points per game. Melvin Gordon was over Javonte Williams, but Javonte was a 20-year-old whenever he was drafted. Like, Javonte is going to take over this job. However, Melvin Gordon will still be that little leech on Javonte Williams that keeps us from truly celebrating an elite level breakout. I would say if Melvin Gordon were to go down, if Melvin Gordon were to miss time, then Javonte Williams does have top 5 running back upside overall in a Russell Wilson-led offense. Now, our 23rd player off this board is going to be Deebo Samuel. If you're playing in a casual format, I think you're going to be able to find wide receiver value later on. That's why we are going to have him a little bit lower like this. But if you're playing in, say, a 12-team league where you have to start 3 wide receivers and you have 2 flex spots, there you'll want to move up Deebo Samuel. You'll want to move up Mike Evans. But Deebo is jumping Mike Evans in our overall rankings due to the contract extension that Deebo Samuel got. I mean, look at his contract compared to DK Metcalf. A.J. Brown. It was surprising, but it's something we need to take note of. And combined with the Mike Evans hamstring injury, combined with Julio Jones coming over, there are a couple different factors making it where I think Deebo Samuel is probably the better play than Mike Evans at this point, especially if we're looking at Chris Godwin potentially being ready for week 1. So we'll have Deebo at 23, Mike Evans at 24, rounding out this top 24. But I think that should be it. Please, guys, go to the comment section. Let me know my worst ranking. Let me know where I need to fix these. I will get y'all another updated list if that's something y'all would like to see. But thank you, guys. I appreciate you so much. You can find all our rankings, the entire list of the top 150, by going and making your first deposit on Underdog Fantasy with promo code FLOCK, a minimum of a $10 deposit. You're going to get that 300-page draft guide, as well as our 2022 fantasy football rankings. And you can have some fun drafting with us on the live stream, or drafting the public lobby, or drafting with your friends, whatever you want to do. And if you're already signed up for Underdog Fantasy, or maybe live in Europe or Mexico or something and can't, we do have our rankings and our draft guide available on flockfantasy.com. But thank you again. I appreciate all of y'all. I hope you have a great day, and I hope we get to see you with the video tomorrow, or maybe even the live stream tonight.